Hello, everybody. Welcome to Adaptable Entrepreneurs. I'm Lisa Kipps-Brown, your host, and I am so happy tonight to have Stacy Huston. Oh my gosh, she is so busy. She's the executive director of Kevin Bacon's SixDegrees organization. She works in the electrical car industry, and she's the founder of TEDx Fairfax. So,
Tysons.
I'm sorry, Tysons. TEDxTysons. Yeah, I'm sorry. I knew that slip. So, Stacy, I want you to tell them a little bit more about the three things that you do in your background, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure thing. So, three completely different things. So, my main day-to-day job is I run SixDegrees.org, which was a charity founded by Kevin Bacon. We focus on amplifying grassroots local charities that are doing amazing work, but you may not have heard of them. So we kind of help shine a light and bring some more awareness to their much deserved mission. And then I consult in the electric vehicle infrastructure space, really building out networks of chargers so that we can continue kind of transportation electrification. We're really on the precipice of that right now. And it's really important that we get chargers in the ground. So as cars still come online and they're so much more affordable, people can, charge them, right? We can kind of talk a little bit more about that. It's a fascinating area and industry. And then I'm a founder of a TEDxTysons, which is an independently organized TEDx event, which if you've heard of TED, of course, you're the independently kind of organized portion of that. So we have been doing that for about 6 years.
Wow.
And produced probably more than 50 talks.
That's cool. That's cool. You are such a busy person. Oh, and y'all, by the way, she's also a mommy of a 1-year-old, right?
Yeah, she's 14 months, going on like 3. I mean, this kid's growing so fast, but it's been an amazing year, COVID has been really hard and devastating for a lot of reasons, but she has been like such a joy. And I am very grateful that I've been here for this year, working from home and kind of getting to see her in all these first few months. It's been really amazing to see it up close.
That's awesome. My baby girl just turned 31 yesterday.
Yeah.
Believe it. Yeah. So
I bet, right? It goes fast. This is what I hear.
It really does. It does. But okay, so I want to talk about each of the three things that you do, and then like everything all together. But I wanted to bring up that the first time you and I talked, you made the comment that you felt like you had prepared your whole life for now, what you're doing now. Did you mean everything all together? Were you referring to like the 6 degrees work more, or what?
Yeah. Really, in that moment, I was specifically talking about 6 degrees. The gratitude I have that I can help make an impact and support so many people in a variety of, we're an agnostic organization in the sense of we don't have pillars, right? So if there's a need and we feel moved by it, we can do something to support them and help them. And I've always had a lot of empathy growing up as a kid. My mom was the same way. We're very emotional people. It's like we see something, we watch a movie and we cry like that is a family member that's going through some devastating scenario, right? And I've always really desired to be able to like help and do more, but didn't really have the tools or the know-how of how I could make a difference. So when I was saying that in the moment, it was specifically 6 degrees, but really I talk about that in the sense of everything that I'm doing right now, right? Like I'm not a traditional person that has kind of that one career focus, that one job. And I think that we tell ourselves that, in order to be successful, you need to be laser focused on this one thing, right? But I have a lot of passions. I have one purpose, but I have lots of passions.
Right.
And it fulfills me in like an amazing way. So, I think that all the different jobs I had along the way, the ones that were terrible and the ones that were like, okay, and the ones that were great and didn't work out, and what have you, I always took something from those.
Right. A lot of times
really
we learn
blocks.
Yeah, a lot of times we learn the most from the bad experiences, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Another thing that you said that I thought was really interesting is you referred to yourself diversifying. And most people don't, they think of a business. You diversify your business. They don't really think about themselves. So like you referred to a minute ago, they think more like, I've got to be really good at this one thing. And I think it's so wonderful that you found these niches that fit the different, your different interests, and you're able to do all of them.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think sometimes you have these like trigger moments in life that maybe force your hand, because we may have a desire to do something, but sometimes we need that little oomph. And I can distinctly remember I worked for an organization. This was probably in like 2011, that I loved. I was a stylist for luxury hotels.
Oh, okay.
I worked for, it was like a matrix organization, but they're called Cintas. Fantastic company. I don't have anything bad to say about them, other than the fact that like I did extremely well for them, and out of nowhere I got laid off.
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling of like just total shock. And I was a single woman. I lived by myself in LA.
Wow.
You know, and that was my income. And I had like, it was, you know, a 6-week severance or something like that. And thinking, I didn't, it's nothing. But luckily I'm a killer interview. So like I had to do 4 weeks, like no problem, because like interviewing became a full-time job. And I, you know, I took the job that, you know, presented itself, you know, fairly quickly, out of necessity. However, I just remember thinking, I don't want to be in this position again. You know, that I have to move quickly, make decisions quickly, or get the, you know, the rug pulled out from under myself and not have anything to kind of fall back on.
Yeah. That's a great point. When you were doing all those interviews, do you have any secrets or tips about how you got so many interviews? Or tips for people, because you said you're a killer interview. Do you have any tips for people that might be looking now?
Yeah, you know, I am one of those people that I definitely work with recruiters, you know, and I think that like on LinkedIn, it's pretty, I mean, they're everywhere now, right?
Yeah.
You're going to find someone, but probably like 10, 15 years ago, it's not like that. It was just like, you know, a common thing to use, you know, a recruiter specifically, but I had a sales background. And so when you're a salesperson, it's not hard to get an interview, because like, it's like I feel like it's like a dying trade, because like people come out of college and they're like forced to go into a sales job. And then you find the people kind of in that mix that were kind of made to do it. It's definitely a certain skill set. So I look at interviews like I am, you know, in
it's a product.
Yeah, I'm a product basically. And I always ask for the next step. I think it's really important to close. I don't know if this is just my experience, but sometimes I dated people for far too long because they were really good at asking me for the next date. And I couldn't say no to somebody when they were in front of me and they said, I'd love to see you again. How about Wednesday? And I'm like, sure, yeah, Wednesday. Right? So one of the things that it's, you know, you need to be assumptive and confident and build value. But yeah, I always say that you really should be confident and always close on those interviews. So yeah, I've done some training around them. I did some volunteer work with different like women's shelters and things like that to try to, you know, help with just interview etiquette and confidence building. But I think it's really important.
That's great advice. Back decades ago, the last interview I had was in the early 90s. And I used to tell my friends, or, you know, younger people now, you are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, because so many people go into an interview and they just desperation reeks off of them. And, you know, they just want a job. But businesses can be like that too, and salespeople can be like that. So you need to be prepared, you know, and get in there and be confident in yourself and be looking at, is this the right thing for me? Whether you're selling yourself or whether you're selling a product for your business. So
absolutely. And I think it's always important to try to be, find like a commonality with who you're interviewing with, something personal that you can touch on. I don't think that people do that enough. They come with all these like canned questions.
Yeah.
Like, oh, do you have any questions for me? And it's like the standard questions, and as opposed to asking someone to open up about themselves. You know, you've been with the company for, you know, a long time. I'd love to hear about, you know, your experience with it and the things that you love about your day to day, because people love talking about themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
And they will remember that way you made them feel, right? Yeah. So there's my helpful interview tip.
Those are great tips. Those are great tips. Okay, so I'm curious, how did you end up with 6Degrees?
Serendipitous. So this is actually a really good story. About 5 years ago, I was working full-time for an organization called EVgo. At that time, they were part of NRG, which is a big energy company, Princeton, I'm sure, and loved it. It was, you know, obviously cutting edge, working in the electric vehicle infrastructure space. I was a site developer for them. It was great. And a girlfriend of mine reached out and said, hey, I have a friend who leads a celebrities nonprofit, and they're going through like a life transition and are looking to find a replacement. I think you'd be great. And I just thought, no, like, one, I'm really happy where I am.
Yeah.
And two, like, you know, the LA girl doesn't move all the way to Virginia and then end up working for a celebrity. It just seemed like it didn't really make a lot of sense. And at that time, I thought, I've never led a nonprofit. I've only ever been in like corporate America, sales, marketing, that type of thing, development. And so I didn't know if I really had what they would need as well, you know? But she's persistent, and I agreed to have coffee with the then executive director. And the morning I was going to have coffee with him, my phone rang, and it was my boss at the time. And he said, yeah, I don't know if it's, well, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we are, you know, getting new investors, and you have an opportunity to move back to LA and grow with the company and lead a team there and all that great stuff. But you have to move back to LA. And at that time, I had just met my now husband.
Okay.
Early, it was like 6 weeks in. So it was like at that early stage where you're kind of like, you can't make a life-changing decision based on this guy of 6 weeks. But I also really knew it was something special, you know? And I said, well, when do I have to tell you by? And he said, 3 p.m.
Oh my gosh, that's no pressure at all.
No, also like rude. 3 p.m.
You know? Think about it. Can you let me marinate in it 24 hours?
You know? But I get it. He was like, they're making decisions quick on who's going to get a severance, who's moving, who, you know. And honestly, I truly appreciated that.
At least you were told.
Like, you know, he valued me as a person above just like a number on his team, and that was invaluable. So that coffee got really important. And I went and had coffee with him, and I remember he was sick. He had like a cold. And I remember thinking the whole time, oh no, because if he's not feeling good, he may think that if he's not feeling good, like the interview didn't go good. You know what I mean? Him feeling like crap, you know? So I'm always like, so I really try to like up the energy and like create good rapport. And it went well. It went great. And I called my boss that afternoon and I said, I think I'm going to take the severance. And he's like, I think that's a smart thing. Don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. And I was like, maybe it took about 4 weeks after that. I had a Skype interview with Kevin directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember, Skype pops up and it says, Kevin Bacon calling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so weird, like,
Yeah.
and answering it. But then immediately it was just completely kind of normal, and
Yeah.
he was really easy to talk to. He had a passion for what he was doing. They definitely needed some direction and kind of what was next for them,
Yeah.
And I kind of realized through all of my like preparation that I did have every skill that they needed. I
Yeah.
didn't ever need to lead a nonprofit to run a successful one.
Right.
And
Yeah. And
I had the
remember,
relationships, I had the business experience, I had the sales experience. I mean, you're selling that nonprofit, you're selling programs, initiatives.
right.
You're trying to get people to open their wallets
Mm-hmm.
to support this vision that you want them to share.
Yeah.
So when you really start thinking about it, it wasn't that much of a leap. But yeah, I ended up starting on my birthday.
Oh, wow. That is such a great story. I love it. And, what you said about never having worked in a nonprofit or never having run one, personally, I think that's an asset, because a lot of times people only work in nonprofits and they have such tunnel vision for how they fundraise, and everybody's doing it the same way. And, I'm big into corporate social responsibility and helping companies understand that you can help organizations in better ways than just handing them money,
Yeah.
and
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
You're
It's
so
like,
right, because nonprofit minded people, there's nothing wrong with someone obviously that works
right.
in
Yeah,
it, but they think about the world fundamentally differently, right?
Mhm.
They have this like very altruistic position, and
Yeah.
their job is all about like impact and giving
Uh-huh.
back. And they see the world so like that way, so close up, that it's hard to step away and say, listen, this is an opportunity for marketing for this
Yeah.
company. This is brand recognition for this company. And
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing. It just is
No,
what it is.
it's not. And it's actually better for everybody, because if you can figure out a way that the company can get something out of it,
Mhm.
goodwill, whatever, then they are more likely to be able to continue to support you for the long term.
Mhm.
Because, hey, let's face it, everybody has down times that they have to cut budgets. But if it's something that's actually contributing to the company, they won't look at it as just a donation. And
Yeah.
with the nonprofit, one of the nonprofits that we promote through the NASCAR team, Racing for Heroes,
Oh, yeah.
and we promote them for free on the car, and we do all kinds of stuff for them. But people have asked the founder, well, why don't we just give you money? Why? And like when we were crowdfunding, why give it to the team? Why don't we just give it to you? And the founder said, no, please don't. Giving the team $10 is like giving us $100, because we're able to provide so much more of a platform, and it takes a lot more money for them to even get close to having the same impact.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that I think that doesn't get talked about enough is actually like the return on investment for like employee engagement. Like when a company looks at corporate social responsibility as something that actually builds so much value and participation in their employees, that they're actually more actively engaged in their day-to-day job because they have higher job satisfaction. And that's just like factual, data-driven stats, So when you give your employees 8 hours a month, or quarter, what have you, to donate their time, or you have, organized activities where they're giving back, like there is a direct correlation to increasing your bottom line at a company. And so if you haven't worked in corporate America, you may not really understand that, and you really can't speak that language. So I think that there's a lot of ways to look at it. But yeah, no, I'm so incredibly lucky. I love what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. You were telling me the other week about one, I think it was in Colorado, one of the projects that y'all did, a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that, because that's a great example of where multiple people were being helped.
Absolutely. So because of my background in business, and I had worked with a lot of small business as well, I love to see the marriage of small business and nonprofits and communities like coming together to help towards a common goal, right? It's great for the businesses to kind of get some additional attention and help people kind of go into their doors. And then essentially they're giving back to these charities that need support as well. But Kevin, he's in the Bacon brothers. Him and his brother Michael have had this band for more than 20 years. And they tour most summers, not last for obvious reasons. But 2 years ago, they went to the Stanley Hotel, which is the hotel that they did The Shining at.
Oh, yeah.
So they were like in Denver, and we found an organization called Samples, which they're a staffing agency, and they're the number 4 staffing agency in terms of like size and employees that they support in the state.
Wow.
But their specific area of expertise are those that are differently able. So, so a range of different disabilities from, mental, physical, all these types of things, which is fantastic. So they help people get gainful employment. They can actually have a suitable living from. And then the other part of the family was like a husband-wife duo. They actually had a restaurant called Samples, and they employed many of the people that they worked with through the staffing agency there even. So they really led by example.
Yeah.
And so it was great. We got Kevin and his brother went down and had lunch and kind of met with all of the employees and the people, and they kind of did a little, kind of pop-up concert, we call it. But
cool.
Yeah, it's like a fantastic way. It's really fun, and it's really a low lift, right?
Yeah.
People like Kevin, celebrities that typically don't get to do this type of stuff. A really interesting and unique opportunity to do a lot of good, by spending an hour or two of their day when they're otherwise going to be, in a trailer waiting for, the stage call. So,
and the wonderful thing one of the wonderful things is that small amount of time for them gives lasting value because it gives publicity, it generates photographs, videos, whatever, evergreen type content that the organization can continue to use in their own marketing. But then I can't even imagine how good it made the employees feel. And
they like light up, and they get to take pictures and then tell stories, and there's an energy about these events that I can't really describe unless you're there. But they're so fun. Like, it's just the joy it brings to so many people, and to have like a little part of that is just so special. Plus, like, my skills have to continue to evolve, because when I started with 6Degrees, I'm the only employee, and I had to learn like PR and write media alerts and things like that. So like, we want people to be there. We want some press to show up so it's a surprise, but we can actually help with some, local publicity to get more business for these organizations, right? And more people to volunteer or donate and what have you. So it's like, I was learning to, who's local in this area and what lists can I grab and send these media alerts out. It's been
That's really cool. Didn't you also say that the man that owns the restaurant said that the other employees have really enjoyed being able to work with people who are differently abled because they've been able to learn, right?
Yeah, it is one of those things he was sharing that I think it goes back to the environment that was created is one that has so much more empathy and enjoyment. It raises the level of satisfaction in such a great way. People are really starting to work not so centered on themselves.
Yeah.
Others. It slows things down. It allows people to really work on a lot of different things that they may not typically work on at a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of benefits, but it was nice to see how, I think that that's the mindset. Well, if you hire someone with disabilities, they're going to slow us down. You're going to have to do twice as much work. And that's the wrong way to think about this, and it was encouraging to see firsthand experience how they've had a really successful business and staffing agency doing this very thing.
That is so awesome that they took what they learned in the restaurant and expanding it out to other businesses through the staffing agency. And for the other employees, it becomes something more than, okay, I'm just going for a paycheck.
Yeah.
I can imagine that it's very fulfilling to them.
Yeah, I think that when you start just kind of literally punching in and punching out, they talk about, not just that you're, disengaged, you're like actively disengaged, like you start making it a more toxic work environment for other people too, so there is a level one can actually start taking away from your bottom line as building towards it. So I'm so for telling that story because, companies really looking at corporate social responsibility and how they can get back. Not only is it like time, I think it's going to be more and more necessary because consumers are becoming much more conscious.
Yeah.
We have so many options. Options are just growing. We're getting more savvy about, looking into companies and who's running them and who's leading them and who's on their board and what do they really stand for. And, I think that people are going to start, making choices to revert to brands, even if it's a couple dollars more because they're going to feel better about that purchase.
Yeah. One of my friends, Daryl Hatton, is the founder of Fundraiser, which is a crowdfunding platform. And he has done a TED talk on this. And his big thing, he calls it the 3 C's: corporation, cause, and customer. And, he talks about how the nonprofit world, the donations and stuff, it's not sustainable for the same reasons that we talked about earlier. If you're just giving, at some point, you might not be able to give, but also it's not worth as much as if you can do other things like for Racing for Heroes, we would have to give them way more money, way more cash, in order to be able to help them as much as we are. This is Kimley. Let's see what she says. I agree that exposure to a person that's differently able creates an environment that enlightens fellow employees. People will begin to realize that everyone really is the same because so many people have never been around somebody that's different. Hobie Wedler, the guy that I mentioned to you earlier, he's a blind PhD chemist, and we met on Clubhouse. And the first day that we talked, he told me later, he already knew my dad was blind because I told him, but he told me later, he said, I would have known even if you hadn't told me because of the way you interacted with me. He said, he can usually tell because people feel more awkward. You can feel like the stiffness if somebody isn't sure what to say,
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I was telling you before, my mom was legally blind. She was in a car accident when I was 8.
Oh, wow.
And, lost, most of her vision. And as a kid, I just remember, really it just felt like, every day for me. But when there was a curb, like, telling her there's a curb down, step up, leading and being part of that. So I think that, I've definitely seen people act a certain way and kind of revert and be a little bit more cautious. And it's kind of silly, but when, we've seen this with racial justice too, when there's not exposure, people, have fear, they're afraid of doing something wrong or inappropriate. And so they're just a little bit more resistant and kind of want to stand back. So I do think that it gives people an opportunity to be exposed and become more knowledgeable, and see that, like Kimberly said, people are really the same, right? They just want the same thing, to feel valued, to do something that they can, afford, a living wage, and to, interact with people and to, give back. Like there's just like these kind of core values that people hold. So, Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I know I'm a glass half full type of person, but I personally think most people are better than a lot of people give them credit for. And I think most people do want to help other people and they want to be good, but well, like you said, they either get afraid or they get jaded or whatever. But the thing with both of us growing up with someone who was vision impaired, it also increases your empathy because we were constantly having to look out for our parent. And, we knew we couldn't leave our toys in the floor because daddy would trip over them. We couldn't leave a door open because he would walk into, the edge of it. Yeah. And so because
your awareness increased.
Right. Yeah. Having to be aware 24 hours a day, but subconsciously. It's not like we were consciously going, oh, we just naturally did these things because we knew if we didn't, what the consequences would be for him. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that, goes over into how you and I, how we
100%. I think it definitely grew my empathy and just awareness. It's like if you would meet someone that was deaf, your initial thought is going to be, oh, I want to make sure that I'm looking at them and they can read lips or, and you ask more questions because you want to be clear on how it's best to communicate or work with them. And whereas some people wouldn't even know where to start. Right. So yeah, I think it does. It's a great learning tool.
Something that I think is interesting is that all three of your career paths currently are in some way helping other people. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was talking to someone earlier about kind of like knowing your why, and I think that's exactly what it comes down to, like where it comes to like my purpose, the different things that I do, they seem very different.
Right.
And they are in a lot of ways, but I'm still driven by helping other people. And I think that I am most enthused and I do the best when I am engaging with people and building people up and like helping people tell their story. It's like very important to me.
And I think it's important for other people to understand that about you because maybe it will help them understand themselves. I think a lot of people just get so caught up in, I just have to have a job, I just have to bring in a paycheck, that they don't allow themselves the luxury of trying to figure out what they like and don't like and what fills their heart and what sucks their soul dry. And so when you are able to understand yourself and find the things that you do in life that actually give you joy, then that helps you give other people joy. I love that.
Can you hear my little 1-year-old? Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine.
I mean, this is life, right? So, no, I do think that helping other people have joy and feel empowered to kind of take a step out. We were saying, like, is it a leap of faith? It could be in a lot of ways, but when you really figure out what you want to do, you will figure out a way to do it. Right. You know what I mean? And, I called it diversifying. You don't always have to do that one big step at once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But a lot of times we're just like kind of paralyzed with this fear, or we build things up so much in our head. And then we just don't do anything. Like, for example, we were talking about, doing these Facebook Lives, right? Part of the reason why I haven't started doing something like this for 6Degrees and other things that I want to talk about, because I'm like, the editing, like the editing will be this huge, massive thing. And Lisa, you're like the second person that said you just have to stream it.
Yeah.
And it's out there and you cut it and you walk away.
Yeah.
Being kind of a person that was like, a perfectionist, a little bit A-type personality.
Yeah.
That is something that would take so much time that I simply just do not have.
You would just go down. I would go down into a black hole that I'd never come out of. I literally wanted to do a podcast for 3 years and I kept not doing it for that very reason. Then all of a sudden I was like, wait, I don't have to do it like everybody else is. My podcast can be wild, can be live, and I call it throwing it out in the wild. It's out the wall. There's nothing I can do. Totally letting go of control. And it feels so liberating because I can't worry about it, So therefore,
it's out there.
Yep, that's right. So before you took the job with 6Degrees, did you say that the job before that was also in the alternative energy space, electric energy?
So that's what happened. I left and then I went to work for 6Degrees and I was there for a couple years. And then while I was on a business trip in Romania, of all places, that's a whole nother story. Beautiful country, definitely underrated. People should travel there. I actually have a heart for Romania and like helping people to explore their beauty, but they have to figure out their tourist thing. They're not great for tourism, but like it is incredible once you're there. So anyways, I say all that to say I was there for this business trip and I got a call from someone that I had worked with when they were part of NRG and before we did the split, and I left. And this person kind of stayed on throughout the next couple of years. And he said, what would it take to get you to come back? And I was like, oh, nothing. Like I'm really happy where I'm at. Like I'm like living my dream. I definitely couldn't come back, full time. And they said, like, what can you give, So I decided to come back as a consultant, and it really worked out because it allowed me to diversify and then actually get my foot back in to doing what I, one, was really good at, and two, just absolutely loved. Love everything about electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure and building it out and helping people understand what's up ahead and getting comfortable with it and everything about it. So I went back and I started consulting with them, and now they're on their own. So, but it's been fantastic. It's been great to reconnect with colleagues again in a different way and meet some new people. So, in one area, I'm kind of like running everything at 6Degrees, and all of my relationships are really external or just with our board. And then with EVgo, I get to kind of have that team environment. It's just like the best of both worlds for sure.
That's really cool. And it is such an interesting, exciting industry because things are happening so fast now.
Oh yeah, we're at that tipping point. I mean, it's just right around the corner. I think they said that batteries are now, they've dropped crazy in price over the last couple of years, but electric cars are expected to be cheaper to own than gas cars in the next less than 2 years.
Wow.
So I mean, that's going to change the game, right? Once someone can say, oh, I can get a car that has 300 miles of range, for $20,000. It opens up an entire new avenue and new drivers that didn't think before that they could ever own an EV.
And one of the things that I love about it that's really totally has nothing to do with that, but think of all the money that's freed up that then can be spent on other things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We got our first EV a couple years ago, and not having to do like the oil changes and like the checkups and things like that. You just realize it's also like time too, that it's so nice that you don't have to put all the different fluids in your car, and everything is truly electric. So it's you
can get the car for 20 or 30,000 versus 50 or 60.
Absolutely. And they're beautiful.
Yeah.
It's fun to drive. It's like they're fast, they're peppy. If you like tech, right? Like,
yeah, I love it.
Cars it's just like driving technology.
Yeah. I got to visit.
So smart.
I got to visit the Tesla manufacturing facility up in Silicon Valley, or whatever, near San Francisco. That was so much fun. And of course, we got to drive in it, ride them and everything. But I have video of, I think I still have it, of the car, and they turned the music on, and it was like the car was dancing to the music, and the doors. It was so funny. It was so cute. And,
we did that for our daughter during Christmas, like the orchestra song, right? And they flap, right? Like the doors. It's so fun.
Really
in the neighborhood, love it.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd ever seen that. So I know a few people that have an electric car, but not that many, but I also live in a rural area and people have to drive further. And, I've seen them more around in cities just because I think.
What part of Southern Virginia are you in?
I'm in South Boston, Halifax. I'm just over the state line from Raleigh. So very middle of the state at the very bottom. Yeah.
Okay. So a few years ago, and this is actually why I came back to consult with EVgo, is Virginia was actually the first state to use the Volkswagen Settlement. Are you familiar with the Volkswagen Settlement?
Yeah. I don't know that much about it, but a bit familiar.
So yeah, because of like the diesel, they call it diesel. The state of Virginia got $15 million or $14 million to build out electric vehicle infrastructure, and they chose to use all of it. And then they brought on EVgo to be like their main partner in that.
Oh, okay.
Which was really exciting. And I lived in Virginia, so I mean, it definitely made sense. And that's kind of how this initially started again. But Virginia's going to have, and it's, a lot of it is almost complete, but I mean, they're going to have this huge statewide network, which is really fantastic. It's actually really easy to drive around Virginia. There are some more chargers in main cities in North Carolina. Yeah. But I mean, over the next 2 years, that's really what's happening. It's just going to be, they're going to start moving into tertiary and markets, right? So we're already in a lot of secondary markets, but you're going to see them connecting those rural hubs so that if you're driving down 95, there's plenty of places to stop for 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah. Up and keep going. Allows you to get lunch and stretch your legs and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. So there are two things that brings to my mind. First of all, because Virginia is such a centrally located state anyway, on the mid-Atlantic coast, and everybody going from Florida to Maine, everybody has to go through Virginia. So it makes the state so convenient to travelers like you just mentioned. Oh my gosh, what was the other? Oh, and then it reminds me of broadband, the last mile with broadband.
Yeah.
And what people don't think about is electricity was the same way. That's why we have electric co-ops, because the cities had electricity, but the rural areas didn't, and they built these electric co-ops so that they could get the electricity the last mile and into homes. So it's interesting how all these different industries, but it's kind of the same.
They have to start somewhere, right?
Right.
And for a long time, it was like range anxiety was the thing, right?
Yes.
And EVs were really just like early adopters. People that were like, big nerds, great nerds, but like big nerds.
One of my friends had
they would stop at a house that was a stranger, in their garage, trickle charging. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing just it becoming so much more mainstream.
Yeah.
And masses adopting it because range anxiety is starting to not be a thing anymore. Battery life is getting so much longer. Chargers are actually also getting larger. So as batteries can get bigger, it's taking about 45 minutes on a fast charger to get full.
Oh, wow.
Maybe at like 15, 20 minutes, it's like that's not a lot of time. It's just kind of changing the way you think about a stop.
Yeah, that's not bad at all, because like you said, you need to stop, stretch, eat anyway.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about TEDx. What made you start that?
So that's like a huge passion project. So I was sitting on the board of directors, and I had started the Emerging Leaders Council for the Tysons Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And we were hosting kind of a panel event for some young professionals at the time. And a gentleman came in by the name of Ashwood, and he had just come from a TED event, actually, like a TEDx event in DC. And he said, oh, this weekend, I went to this TEDx event. I was like, oh my gosh, I love TED. He's like, so do I. It's like so amazing and inspiring. And we were playing around with ideas to help the chamber just have fresher events.
Yeah.
Events that encourage more community and discussions and could actually attract more young professionals as well. And he said, would you ever want to do one? And I said, yeah. And you want to do the license with me? And I'm like, yeah.
Oh.
And it was really just like that. And I barely knew the guy. And then
That's so
our
funny.
third friend, who also, he was, in the chamber. His name's Josh. We were all talking. So we filed, and then we turned into a 501c3, and we had our first event. It had to be 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
Because like with TED, if you mess up, they don't want you to mess up in front of like a huge amount of people.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was incredible. And one of our first talks has like more than 6 million views.
Wow, that's great.
One of our fastest growing talks was like in the first year. And it was fantastic. And it was like an outlet. It was a passion project, and I got to meet so many incredible people with such original ideas. And it really became a family,
That's cool.
And so we've had probably like 10 to 12 events.
Wow. How many
over
people
the last 5 years?
How many speakers do you usually have at each event?
So we have an annual event once a year that's somewhere between 12 and 14 speakers, because it's typically like an all-day event, right?
Okay.
Breakout sessions and lunch and dinner and like that whole thing, and then an after party. And it's just like this amazing celebration, culmination of like a ton of work. But then a few times during the year, we would hold salon events. And salon events can be no more than 4 speakers, but they're on a specific topic. So we've done one on veterans that are transitioning back into the private sector. And we had, only speakers that kind of were veterans tied to that like industry and talking about transitioning in different ways, which was a fantastic event. And
especially up there, because there's so many people.
Oh yeah, with the Pentagon and all the bases, absolutely. It was the seat of the government. It was great. You can actually be really creative with where you hold salons too. So we had it at a retirement home that was actually mainly were veterans. That lived there. So it was also a way to highlight this really great space in the community. And an organization that not a lot of people knew were there. It was kind of tucked away. So, but we've worked with a lot of private theaters and, other venue spaces throughout. We have Capital One headquarters is here in Tysons as well. So we did one of our huge event there, and that was great. Kimberly says we need a rural TED.
I know. Actually, Ryan and I, the NASCAR driver's dad, several years ago, we met at my office, and we're like, we want to do something together. And we talked about maybe we ought to do this. And we talked about it, but we never pursued it. And so it's funny how every once in a while we'll bring it back up, because we did end up working together, for his son. And whereas before we were just business associates, we just like knew each other in passing. And one of the women that works for him, she was talking to me one day, and she goes, you and Ryan need to get to know each other better, because y'all are like totally alike. Y'all think so much alike. So he came over, and we were like, and so
you would be amazing. You should do it. And there's also the really fun fact about if you license an event and you do it yourself, is that you get a discount to go to like the main TED event.
Oh, cool.
And so all 3 of us, the founders, have gone to one. Wow. And me and Woody Ashwood, I call him Woody, we went to one in Canada. And then our other co-founder went to one. He did Tanzania. So we were like, oh, you win. He got to go to like one of the global ones that were really cool.
Wow, that's cool.
The one in Canada was fantastic. It was in Banff. And you want to talk about Banff. It's on the West Coast.
British Columbia.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Is it close to Vancouver?
Yeah, it's like it's where you see all the pictures of like the glacial lakes.
Oh yeah,
like the water looks like it's crystal. It was. I'll send you some pictures.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see it. I've been to Nova Scotia, but not over there.
Yeah,
that's where Daryl lives, the guy that founded Fundraiser. He lives in Vancouver.
Yeah. It's fantastic. They will ruin you for any event that you ever go to again. Like the swag, like all the swag bags and like the food and
oh man,
there was an amazing party, and like of course all the music is like by like prolific artists and singers and like entertainers that are like, they're also performing, like, you know.
Yeah.
And every day, all day long, you're having all these incredible conversations with people that like you honestly, how it felt was like, we have to go back to like
the real world,
like normal everyday
people. Yeah.
Conversations instead of having these like existential conversations. I mean, we'd be crying and laughing in like a 15-minute period. It is definitely an emotional toll, but one of the best experiences I've ever done.
Oh man. Yeah, it sounds amazing. Okay, now I got to talk with Ryan again about that.
Get it on the bucket list. Just do it.
We have to do it. I've had you for almost an hour, and I don't want to keep you any longer because I know your baby probably needs you. And even if she doesn't, you need to relax before tomorrow. But okay, so tell everybody how they can find out about more about Six Degrees and more about everything.
Yeah, definitely. So you can head over all of our social medias. 6 Degrees on Twitter and Instagram is spelled out 6 Degrees of KB as in Kevin Bacon. Okay. So SixDegrees of KB. And then we're 6degrees.org on Facebook. So we'd love to connect. You can also head over to our website at 6degrees.org. TEDxTysons is at TEDxTysons on all of the major platforms. And we are, because of COVID, having kind of a planning year and waiting to see when it lifts up so we can safely gather again and have events. But we're looking forward to maybe announcing something later in the year. And EVgo Network, you can go to EVgonetwork.com and find out more information about the great work that they're doing and their EVgo Network on all major social media and actually TikTok. They have like 30,000 followers.
Wow.
If you like electric cars and seeing some fun stuff, you want to head over to their TikTok.
Yeah, I'll go check that out as soon as we get off. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, Stacy. I've enjoyed it so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Lisa. You're wonderful. Anytime. I'm so glad we met on Clubhouse, and I'm looking forward to continuing to chat with you along the way.
I am too. And y'all, I'm going to be having an announcement pretty soon about 2 different events, 2 different virtual events. And I believe Stacy will be involved in one, I believe. Yes. And so 2 totally different things. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And I thank y'all for joining us. And all of my past shows are on my website, lisakipps-brown.com. Thank you so much, Stacy. And I'll talk with you soon.
As always. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.